Hello and welcome to System Check, where we check out those funky TTRPG systems and see if it's a fit for you and your group. And in this episode, we're tackling an all-time fave, Pathfinder. Before we begin, I want to mention that I started doing a blog post version of System Check videos over on my Ko-fi, alongside some extra written guides to help new players and GMs play each system I cover. So if you would prefer this in a written format, feel free to head to the link below and in the little corner. Now, Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered is a bit of a mouthful, so we'll just call it Pathfinder for this video, and yep, today we're doing an overview of the system and seeing if this might just be a system for you and maybe your friends too. So, what is Pathfinder? Well, Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remaster is the latest edition of the Pathfinder tabletop game, created by Paizo. As for the reason for the remaster, some avid tabletop fans may remember a small little major mess up from Wizards of the Coast a while back, which you may know as the OGL incident, where TLDR, a lot of games used this OGL for their games, previous versions of Pathfinder 2 included, leading them to remaster the system now free of said OGL. Now, Pathfinder is a fantasy tabletop RPG, typically taking place in its world of Galarian, with its players typically taking on the roles of Pathfinders, which are basically the adventurers of the world. Obviously, this is all setting specific, but you get the idea. And the game has systems for combat, roleplay, exploration, and so much more. The game makes use of the full array from dice from D4s to D20s and a D100 or percentile die for rare occasions. A lot of people see it as a more complex or advanced version of Dungeons & Dragons, and whilst it has its roots in D&D, I can't agree with that. Well, not entirely anyway. I do agree it feels a lot more overwhelming at first glance. There's a lot more work that goes into making your characters, setting up your character sheet, and so on. Basically, there's a lot more choice that goes into Pathfinder, and this is going to be one of the first major mechanics which decides whether the system is for you or not. Pathfinder is a system where your abilities are chosen by the player. Each level you are given a choice of abilities to take. You are constantly making active choices of how your character grows and develops, with all the classes, and there's quite a few of them, having differing ways to play that can be even further refined based off the before mentioned choices. This is great for those who love the freedom of control, the ability to truly make their character their own. However, the issue with this is Pathfinder has a lot of abilities, like a lot, that can definitely cause some horrendous choice paralysis. For example, a level 1 fighter has 10 choices for their first class feat, and that's just one choice a player has to make at this level. I don't blame anyone who looks at the spreadsheet of a choice list and pieces out. But let's try to break down what goes into a character. Each character has both ability scores and skill proficiencies. The attributes are your standard array of strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, that go on to influence both combat and your out of combat abilities. Proficiency in Pathfinder are based on tiers: untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary, representing exactly how skilled you are at something. These tiered proficiencies also apply to armor types, weapon types, and saving throws. And skill checks are exactly as they say on the tin. They're your standard roll to see how well you perform or attempt a task. What Pathfinder has for these checks is interesting, as rather than just succeed or failure, we also have critical success and failures, which can be triggered by the usual nat 20 or nat 1, but it can also happen if you succeed the DC by 10 or higher, or fail by 10 or more. And these also apply to combat rolls, so the higher your roll bonuses get, the higher your crit chance climbs. Another thing to note about Pathfinder is that your numbers will constantly be going up. Your base proficiency is tied to your level, so whenever you level, you will find yourself getting better and better at things. There are no stagnant levels or stats till the very end. So let's talk about what helps determine our stats and skills. All our starting stats and abilities are decided by what ancestry, background, and class you choose, each giving a set of ability increases and skills depending on what you choose. You also then get some free stat boosts on top of that. And I really like this, moving most of your stats away from who you were born as and instead of how your character has lived their life and their experiences. A warrior will get access to strength boosts and a wizard will get intelligence boosts, and so on. Your ancestry does have some effect on stats, but you're normally pretty free about how exactly those impact you. This also means there isn't any rolling for our attributes, which is great for some, a shame for others depending on what you prefer. As touched on earlier, each character gets a choice of class feats at certain levels, but they also get other feats not tied to class, such as skill feats, general feats, and ancestry feats. Ancestry is often referred to as race in other games, but alongside ancestry we also have heritage. As an example of this means if you are of human descent, you could also have orcish or infernal heritage, being the equivalent to a half-orc or tiefling respectively. And of course, as we enter the discussion of weapons, we next have to talk about the next choice of what sort of weapons you want. And remember how I said there were quite a few choices for that? Yeah, there's a lot. And whilst we're on the topic of weapons, let's talk runes real quick. Runes are your way of upgrading and enhancing your weapons, making them easier to hit with, deal more damage, and a wide variety of other effects, and these runes are woven into the expected progression of a campaign. This does mean that if you want to take your starting weapon and one day upgrade it into a relic of heroic proportions, you can absolutely do that. And if you want to swap to something else, you can also transfer the runes to a new weapon. Now, combat in this system is turn-based, with turn order determined by initiative rolls, with each turn consisting of a free action economy. Basically, everything you do has an assigned action point cost. There are no separated action types, which means if you want to move, that would cost one of your actions. This makes every turn an equation of figuring out how to best make use of these actions based around the current circumstance. You may choose to spend one action on movement and your remaining two on attacking, or you could spend them all on attempting to assist your friends or setting up for something on the following turn. Alongside this, combat also has more of a focus on character positioning, giving bonuses and reductions to hit based on where you are relative to your foes. For example, if you are an ally or opposing sides of an enemy, this is called flanking and gives you both a bonus to hit. But of course, foes can do the same to work back to you. A personal favourability of mine is Intimidating Glare, in which you can just strike fear into the hearts of your foes with a mere glance. Fear is an amazing status to inflict on enemies as it benefits not only yourself, but also your allies. And whilst it means we may have one less swing per turn, it makes the rest of everyone's actions that more powerful. Although to an extent, just swinging wildly isn't the best idea, due to the multiple attack penalty, or MAP. This comes into play after you make an attack during your turn. Follow-up attacks have a reduced chance of hitting, with the MAP getting higher with each swing. Some feats and abilities will have ways around this, or ways to mitigate it, further encouraging thinking more about your build and playstyle, and what sort of style of combat you're wanting to play. Now, with all of these options for combat, this does mean there's a lot to learn right off the bat. Similar systems tend to give you a few abilities to start with, then build up slowly, whilst Pathfinder gives you a bigger whack off the bat. There's also more to keep track of, and more maths involved, like the before mentioned map. This does mean that combat can take a while, especially for new players and DMs learning the system. Thankfully, virtual tabletop systems are able to make this far easier. Foundry has modules for Pathfinder that automates flanking bonuses, map for your attacks, and so on. From personal experience as a player, I can't state enough how important working together with your team is. Being able to combo off one another and help set each other's abilities up makes the combat flow best and keeps the team going. At the beginning of the campaign, there were just some encounters we thought were just nightmares that we later learned if we just had played better and smarter, instead of just spamming our attacks, we would have had a much better time. Out of combat, we have plenty of mechanics for exploration, survival, dungeoneering, and so on, with roleplay being dictated by the DMs and players. This is both for large-scale travelling across the map and smaller scale, making use of the player skills to be able to safely traverse and avoid dangers. For example, stealth can be used to avoid notice, and if you don't feel you'll be able to avoid an encounter, you can preemptively raise your shield to be in a better position before combat starts. Of course, you're encouraged to use the mechanics you like. Don't like keeping track of food? Don't bother, your group shapes your game how you want it. As I said earlier, this was just a brief overview of the system. For Pathfinder specifically, I think I will be making more in-depth videos because there's just so much to cover that one overview is just not enough. But to try and summarise, Pathfinder 2e is a system all around making choices, and there's a lot to make. It's not going to be for everyone. Some people prefer more preset options, where at this level you get this ability and so on. I personally love the choice aspect because its freedom allows for some incredible builds and combinations that other systems lack. It lets you really shape your character concept the way you want. And I've barely scratched the surface on this one. I especially love how varied and versatile the different classes are. But as said earlier, this can definitely cause choice paralysis for some. And I won't lie and say it doesn't seem overwhelming, because it does appear that way. And that's one of the complaints or reasons people give for not being able to get into the system. Pathfinder has a lot to keep track of compared to other systems, and whilst digital tools can definitely reduce the load, it's still more work. As a side note, I'd highly recommend checking out Pathfinder, as it's a super useful tool for making and creating Pathfinder characters, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below. I'll also leave a link to Archive of Nephis. The site is a great database on all the spells, abilities, and everything you could ever need to play. Nephis also thankfully includes the game's safety tools, so be sure to check those out before playing. I've also only really covered the rules from the core DM/players guide here, as each of the later books can offer additional mechanics and rules which will likely also get their own videos down the line, because I didn't want to overload anyone more than I may already have. So what do you think of the system? Think you might be interested? And if you're not, I hope you enjoy my future videos covering other systems. And if you have any recommendations for systems I should check out or thoughts about this one, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Until next time, I'm Deval, and I'll see you all next time. Happy adventuring!